Hello and welcome to Cherish Cars, and well done for sticking with me on this three-part mini epic as we do these rear brakes on the 2013 Insignia. If you're not seen the vehicle, there's a walk around of the actual vehicle. We looked at a few different jobs that what doing, and we started off with the rear brakes because they were down to bare metal on one side, which was pretty horrific and very unsafe. As we progressed, we discovered that the seals were gone, so we had to order them and wait for them. And then as we've gone through and reassembled, it's all just been a bit of a faff, and I ran out of time the other night. So this is my third attempt at what is meant to be a very straightforward and simple job. I've also tried to address some issues with the channel, so I realised as I was editing the videos that I was shooting everything in portrait rather than landscape, so it looks a bit weird when you see it on the big screen. So hopefully this is going to be a bit better. I haven't got a gimbal, so there's a little bit of camera shake. I'm just going to go back to holding this with two hands. And yeah, so what we're going to do today, do have a look at the other videos if you haven't seen them yet, and this will make more sense. But essentially today is reassemble of the brake calipers, including the hangers with the new pads on them. Show you a little bit, you know, there's loads of brake change videos out there, so I'll go quite quickly on that. I'm going to do an unboxing on a bleeding tool, which means I could do the brake vacuum hoses on my own, which is always useful. Just again, that speeds up because I'm not waiting for anyone else. And then I'll bleed down the brakes, test and check the handbrake and the function of the brakes, make sure everything's working okay, get it all back together, and that's this video done. So yeah, watch on to see what tools we need. Okay, so what have we got for this job? Well, we're going to turn these basic components here into a complete assembly. We're then going to rebuild the actual calipers themselves and get them back on. But first of all, we're going to need to stick the discs on. So we're going to use a bit of brake cleaner and some blue roll just to clean off the protective grease on that. That means we can assemble the actual components, get the calipers back on. I'll need a couple of sockets. I think it's an 18mm and a 13mm off the top of my head. And then I can check the handbrake's working, check the components are moving freely where they're meant to move and not moving where they're not meant to move. So I've got a grub screw to put back in, for example. And I know I'm going to need to top up the brake fluid itself because quite a bit came out as I took the actual calipers apart to give the seals a service. So some basic tools. I'm just going to need some sockets, I'm going to need some blue roll and some brake cleaner, some gloves, and that's about it for now. Okay, so first things first, we're going to turn this uncompleted assembly into this complete assembly. First job we will need to do is seat the clips back inside where they go. So the easiest way I find to do this is just to do the inside bit first and then press the rest of it home. That's one side. There is a bit of a gap, which you can just see there, but that's close enough for what we need to do. Now, what I want to do is get the actual pads in themselves. I want to make sure I've got my wear indicator on the front pad, so I'll put the rear one on first. I want to make sure I don't contaminate these surfaces, so I'm being careful to keep them together. Now the first opportunity to really contaminate the surfaces comes when I'm going to use a little bit of copper grease just on these little pins here where it's going to bed into the holder. So I want to have a bit of blue roll to hand, ready to wipe my fingers. I find it's always useful if you've done one just to have it orientated so that you can just have an easy reference guide just to look into. Tiny little bit of copper grease, you don't want a lot, that's more than enough. I'll be wiping some of that off my fingers. And just try and keep everything nice and clean as you're working. So that looks like it's been contaminated, but actually it's overspray. That's not ideal, that's overspray on the actual front of the pad there. Not sure what, if anything, I can do about that really. I mean, there's a slight chamfer on the pad anyway, so that's the surface that's going to be in contact with the pad, and that is clean. But yeah, that's not the best, but these are guaranteed parts, so if I do have problems with them, I'll just take them back. So just a little bit around the outside edge first, then being really careful on the inside edge, When I say being careful, just keeping it away from the actual friction material. So again, a little smear on the inside edge. Just lather it around the back a little bit. I'm not buttering it up, I'm just putting a little bit around the outside. And as I said, wiping some off my fingers. Don't want any of that going onto the actual pad itself. Did have a little bit just touch onto the edge of the pad there, so just wipe off now. But that's not going to cause me any problems. Right, so the trick when you're assembling these is to try and put it in at an angle. So seat it in. This is where, if I was using new locating springs, it would make life a bit easier, to be fair. But because I'm budget conscious, I'm doing it with the originals. There we go, that's got it. Okay, so I've just got that angle in there like that. Now all I want to do is press it home. There we go. Okay, so that's in, we're happy with that. Don't want to put it in too far, just want to locate it for now. And then when we reassemble it, I want to give myself as much space as possible, and then I'll slide it in and onto the disc itself once that's installed. So now I want to do the other side. So again, I just want a tiny little bit of copper grease. Don't need much at all, that's plenty. You look at that tube and you think, you know, there's nothing there, but actually I've had this a while and it's lasting me really well. You don't need much copper grease at all for this job. And this is helping me to reassemble, but also what it does is it just helps prevent squeaking within the brake assembly as well. So you do want to put a little bit of copper grease between any components that are going to rub. So when I reassemble it, I'll be putting some copper grease just on the relevant parts of the backing plate. Not all over it, because it's going to stick dirt and rubbish to it. Just where you need it, just where it's come into contact with metal on metal. So what I want to do is press it down and then just turn it, and it should go home. There we go, bingo. That's pretty easy actually. So you can see it's nicely located in there. That's nicely located in there. That's this step complete, so we're happy with that. The next job is to get the actual discs themselves. They're going to have a protective film of grease on them, so we want to clean that off. And then we're going to start getting things onto the car and getting it all assembled. So here we go with our pads. We've got the matching, I think it's Eicher, I don't know how you actually pronounce it, but the reason I've gone for these is you get the 24,000 mile warranty if you replace them as an axle set, discs and pads together. So 24,000 miles is plenty of miles for pads and discs. I think that's a really good warranty, to be honest. Everyone's got different driving style, so you can never really legislate for how long they'll last, but you know, I think that gives really good peace of mind. So when I do come to sell the car on, whoever gets it off me is going to be really confident that the pads either don't want doing or the discs and pads don't want doing. But if there are any problems, they've got some warranty on them. And yeah, you can see straight away inside there, you can see it's got some protective oil in there just to stop it corroding while it's in shipment. So we just take it out of this. I'm going to get a good clean. I'll go front first because it can sit on here, and then when I clean it, it can sit back on this, because that bit can have film on it. I'm not bothered about it. This is a friction bit, but we don't want any film or crap on. And you want to be nice and liberal with the brake cleaner. You can see how much crap's coming off them, so you definitely want to do this. Don't skip this step, because you're putting nice new pads and discs on. You don't want to contaminate the friction material in your pads straight off the bat. Give it a little wipe on the inside again. This surface isn't particularly important, but I just want to give it a little wipe. You can see a fair bit of crap came off. From now on, when I'm picking this up, I want to try to avoid actually touching the brake disc myself, because again, I've got oil, I've got a little bit of contaminant on my hands. What I'm going to do now is just go and give the actual hub itself a quick clean. and then I'll stick the disc on and start reassembling the different components. Okay, so we're finally getting to the stage where this is coming back together. So on with the actual disc. I didn't take a grub screw out this time. I'm having some fair old dramas with my camera here. So yeah, everything's falling apart on me. This is just gonna have to do. Right, so I didn't take a grub screw out on the side, so I've not got one to put back in. I'm gonna leave it the way I found it. I'm gonna get the caliper itself. Obviously once the wheel bolts go on, that'll nip down. So just taking out the bolts that I put in there to keep them safe, and I've so far dropped every single one, so I'm not doing a very good job of keeping them safe. Now I'm reassembling it. So this should locate in the cutout behind the disc, which it does, so that's all easy. These just go straight back in through the back. These were 18mm heads. There we go, that was almost finger tight. There we go. It's gone on really easily. And then this one here, again, it's not quite located yet. Whenever you're reassembling components like this, you don't want to over tighten one side before you've got the other side on, because what can happen is it might not be square and you might not quite be able to start your thread. So just, there we go, a little bit of an adjustment there if you saw that on the camera. Just twisted it slightly that way, and that's given me the opportunity to get both on square, get them both finger tight. Not going to crank them up just yet, I'm going to get everything assembled in place. So that's fine. I've not used any Loctite on these, I'll just make sure I nip them down nice and firmly. I don't like Loctite, to be honest, it's a right noise to get it off. Okay, so I've wound my caliper back on here. Before I put this back on, I'm just going to squeeze these pads together. And that's going to make sure that this all goes back together okay. Now, last job I've got, I'm going to put some copper grease inside here and around that. And they're the bits that are going to contact the back of the pad. So rather than coating the actual pad with copper grease, just put on the bits that are going to contact it, and then you've not got loads of gunk all over the place. So I'll just grab my copper grease. And this phase of the job is so much quicker and easier once you're just reassembling the components. So a little bit more generous with the copper grease, but again, I'm not going for loads. This is about putting it where you need it rather than just lathering it on and hope you cover the bit that you think you want. So little smear there, little smear there, decent little coat inside there. Having said that, I might want a bit more. I'm going to put a bit more on. There we go. But again, you know, this tube is going to last me plenty long. And for a home mechanic, don't necessarily have loads of space to have tubs of grease all over the shop. So, you know, I think if you've got a decent sized garage, then, you know, there is a benefit. If you're going to do this job a lot, there's a benefit to buying in bulk because you're going to get a cheaper unit price. But this is ideal, you know, I can have that on the road with me. And I often, when I'm reassembling components, will just stick a bit of copper grease on them to make them easier to take apart again. Haven't done that on the brakes because although I'm not using Loctite, I don't want them to be particularly easy to take apart. Okay, so now for the moment of truth, if I've done all this right, this should just slide back on. I'm just pushing these sliders back in so I can just get the head realigned. There we go. Got two bolts. These bolts are both identical, so it doesn't matter which one comes out of which. Get that one located, and then that's it. That's in the thread. Get this one down here located. Is that in? Yeah. Okay, good. I'm leaving the clamp on. I'm not going to take that off until I'm ready to bleed the actual brakes. Okay, let's go to the other side. I'll stick it on time lapse and do it all again. So the brakes are on now. Happy with that. It's all looking a lot better than it was. The new pads fit very nicely, not a problem at all getting them back on. Had to rewind the piston on both sides. Interestingly, on the driver's side it was quite free, so it kept coming back out again, so I released off the clamp, and that's obviously let the air back up the pipe. I think I was creating a bit of compression when I was pushing it back, and it was springing back out again. So there's going to be a fair bit of bleeding to do. I am losing light though, and I haven't got a lighting rig, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to quickly have a look at the tool I'm going to use to bleed out the brakes and describe the process, and then what I'll do, I'll jump back on this tomorrow morning, finish off the bleeding, do the tests, and that'll wrap up this video. It's a bit of a shame not to finish it now, but to be completely honest, I've got a McDonald's that's just turned up for me, so I'm going to go and eat that as well. So quick recap then, I've used the Eicher discs and pads, 24,000 mile warranty on them. They're available from Euro Car Parts, and there's a link in the description down below. And I'm going to have a quick look now at this tool. This is a cheapo off Amazon. This is a vacuum operated bleeding kit for brakes. Here it is in all its glory. It's never been used before. It's off of Amazon. I think I paid about 20 quid, 18 quid, something like that. It's under 20 quid anyway. So let's have a quick look at it and I'll describe how it works. So I'm back in handheld mode now. So what I've got a little hand operated vacuum pump. It's got a little dial on it there. The easiest way to test these, it's going to be very difficult to do because I'm holding the camera, but if you pop your finger over there, and how's this work? Is it that bit? Yeah, so if I pop my finger over there and try and operate it with my knee, do you see? That's holding pressure. And if I take my finger off, you can see it's losing pressure as well. So I'm going to have to attach a hose to this. That's going to go into this cup, which wants to be stood up when I actually assemble it. One of these is going to be a lid for a cup. There we go, it's this one. Oh, it's all quite tight in there. Nice plastic ABS case again. I'm a fan of these. So you see you've got some retaining clips, lugs inside the lid here, and then they marry into these gaps around here. You've got a little, excuse my finger there, you've got a little rubberized seal. What you're going to do is locate them together, twist that, it's going to put a decent seal on it. You connect one part of the lid to your pump with some of this translucent hose in, and then the other side of it goes to your bleed valve, which is here. So if you see on here, I'm not going to be able to get that off very easily with my fingertips because I've just made sure it's loose and greased ready for tomorrow. We use some brake fluid to grease it rather than actual grease. You stick your hose onto there, onto the cup here, you pump up the pressure, and that's going to draw the air and the bubbles through into the container, where that's going to stay, and you're not going to have brake fluid coming this side towards your pump, because if it gets inside the pump it's going to knacker up the seals. What have we got in the kit? We've got some hosing, as I said. You've got some little lengths there for connecting between the pump and the actual cup. I think the trickiest part of using a setup like this is not twisting the cup and dropping it and knocking it around. So we'll see how we get on with that tomorrow. I've then got some three-way connectors, I think, and a two-way connector there. I think that's more for awkward access for things like if you've got a bleed valve on the actual header tank for the brake fluid, or if you're draining off something else other than this. You've got ABC, that's the wrong way around, isn't it? But you've got ABC, and these are different size attachments to go onto the actual nipple valves themselves. The bottom of these is all the same, and this goes into your tubing. So the idea is you press on the best fit, stick your tubing on, and then these are just little adapters for connecting lines of different sizes as well. Sorry, my finger keeps getting in the way of the camera. That's a bit shoddy. That's like a universal cup attachment, and that I think is just a lid for transporting any brake fluid, because of course brake fluid itself is very corrosive. You don't want that to spill anywhere. So yeah, so I'm pretty happy with all of that. I know I've got vacuum on it, haven't used it in anger yet, but I think for the sake of 16 quid or so, 18 quid I think it was, for the sake of 18 quid, I'm pretty pleased with that. We'll see how it gets on tomorrow. So we've had a good go with the vacuum pump to try and bleed these brakes. It might be something I'm doing wrong. I managed to draw through the old fluid. I've got nice clean brake fluid now, but I can't have any confidence I've got all the air out of the system. So what I'm going to do is go back to the old school, get one of the kids to stomp down on the middle pedal while I release and then close up the actual bleed valve itself. That'll just give me the confidence that I've got all the bubbles out. I did start, as you meant, to furthest away from the master cylinder, so it was always going to be a bit of a, you know, a bit of a difficult one. But that pump's just really hard work. The handle's not great on it. Am I going to recommend you buy it? No. Am I going to say that technology's not a great idea? Also no. Might be some user error. So we persevere. We're going to get these brakes done today because I'm fed up of this job. Catch you in a bit. Okay, so we're back at the Insignia. I've enlisted some help.
What's up, YouTube?
What's up, YouTube? Yeah, okay, this guy knows what he's about. We have got some updates on the tools. So I'm going to give up on the vacuum pump. That's what I've got the lad to help me out with the foot brake, just to help get all the air out of the lines. I'm also going to give up on my trusty Halfords advanced brake connector spanner jobby. It's just a bit too fat to get around the actual bleed valve properly on the Insignia, which is a bit annoying. So just nipped down the local motor factors and picked up those bad boys. Very old school cool, but my plan is I'm going to put some tubes. I'll just steal a bit of tube off here, stick the tube on the actual nipple itself, and then thread the box spanner over the tube onto the nipple, and then I'll use the kind of outer circumference, get an adjustable wrench on there, and that should mean that I can get a really good kind of seal all the way around that, because these are hollow. So what I don't want to do is snap the bolt because they're hollow, so they're fragile, and again, the more faff I've got with it, the more likely it is that air will get back in and this job's just going to go on forever. So without messing about, I'm going to get into that now, get this done. Loads of videos on YouTube on how to bleed brakes, so we'll stick you on time lapse, so we'll just get this done.
I wanted to do this.
You are, you do the video with me. Famous, bro, famous. Okay, so that's the brakes done. They've all been bled. Very happy with that. Happy with the colour of the fluid coming out. Needed to have my eldest help just to finish that job off then. So I think what I'm going to say about the vacuum siphon, it's just not really worth the 18 quid or so it costs. So yeah, if you want to check it out, then by all means do. I'll stick a link down the bottom, but not really with a recommendation to buy, to be honest. Would it work better on a lighter duty application, maybe like mountain bike hydraulics? Yeah, possibly. And like I said, there probably was some user error with that as well. But given that I was working on the rear brakes, that the calipers had been off, there's a fair bit of air in the system. The fluid was pretty manky. I've got through almost a litre of brake fluid, which is a lot more than you'd usually use on a job like this. So a fair bit's come through and flushed through. And what first came out looked really manky as well, if you see it on the video. So yes, I think having someone pressing down on the brakes just sped the job up, to be completely honest. Last couple of things I've got to do now. I'm going to do a quick road test just to make sure. It felt like the passenger side was binding ever so slightly. It felt a lot better when the wheel went back on. So it might just be everything nipping up. If it's running free, it'll be obvious. If it's fouling or binding, it'll also be obvious. So I'll do a quick road test now. I will torque the nuts up properly, but I just can't be bothered doing that if the wheel's going to come back off. They're nipped up properly anyway now, and it's good practice anyway whenever you change your wheel to check the torque on the nuts. after about 50 miles or so. So yeah, at the end of the day, those nut covers are going to come off, and I'm going to look at that again. And the last thing I've got to do is clean my tools, put them away, clean the 2 trays that I had brake fluid in, put all of that in the bottle that I'm collecting the brake fluid in, so I can recycle the vat properly at the waste disposal centre. That job's been a bit of an epic. It's been stop start, so I've probably spent 4 hours actually doing the job, a couple of hours of faffing around. I spent about an hour faffing around today with that vacuum pump, which wasn't really beneficial to anybody. Had a bit of a faff rebuilding the brake calipers. But yeah, in essence, that's the first big job done on the car. It's great that we've got that done as well, so I can use it this coming weekend. We've got a road trip up to North Wales with a family, so looking forward to that, and it's great to have the Siggy available for that as well. So I think the next job I'll probably have a go at the paintless dent repair, and the front of the car is going to come off so I can get the radiator off, get good access into the lower area where the subframe is, so I can clean that off and stone chip it, sort out the headlights, see if there's anything else wants doing. I'll have a good look around for any oil spots, and just general look at any components, you know, engine mountings, bushings, that kind of stuff. I think it's all pretty straightforward. So other than just the kind of disassembly and reassembly, taking a bit of time on that job shouldn't be too bad. Thank you again for your time. Please do like and subscribe if you enjoy what you're seeing. Stick some comments in, good or bad, you know, it's all good feedback. It goes a long way to improving the channel. And yeah, I'll see you on the other side. Bye bye.